these reviews for compliance and leverage those. We don't want to create new processes. The interoperability policy I talked about is part of the acquisition process. Is it any different than an investment review? Yeah, it is, because we're looking at specifically how are they mitigating their interoperability risks, but it doesn't stand on its own. These processes are not just created as architecture reviews. They're processes that exist for other reasons. So with that, I'd like to close, and if there are any questions, I think I have maybe 10 minutes left.
Yeah, I've got a question. Would you elaborate a little bit about the executability of architectures in terms of how you're looking at that and using it?
So there's a number of ways to answer that, because we've published a lot in the past in the department on executable architecture, and it's really how is it that we incorporate that data into modeling and simulation. So that's one aspect of executable. Is it sufficient? Is it based on data that can be used by modeling and simulation tools? But then there's the other aspect of executable, and that is, can it be used by a portfolio manager or by a program manager to influence their decisions and their designs? So there's two elements of executable. One is a little more traditional in the department that really is specific to modeling and simulation, but the next is really usability. Am I able to take that content as a portfolio manager and execute based on its guidance?
So what kinds of sanctions do you apply to people who do not follow your architecture?
They can't pass an acquisition milestone, for example. They have to illustrate how they're going to mitigate an interoperability issue if one is disclosed during an interoperability assessment. They don't get approval to fund new development if they don't pass an investment review board that's conducted by one of our investment review boards in the business area. So there are gates that investments have to go through, whether it's a technical gate or a business process assessment. They do get stopped in these various processes. But again, these are existing processes within the department. Architecture is just another element that we use to assess compliance at that point. Hey, Jonathan.
Hi, Brian. Could you comment on how the federated approach of architectures might extend beyond DOD's borders about other departments and agencies for interagency interoperability?
Yeah, I don't think that there really is a boundary for where a federation stops. I think you can just keep building the federation. It's really a matter of establishing the relationships across the different architectures. We've done the same thing with NATO. We've looked at NATO's operational architectures and defined how they relate to relevant DoD architectures. So you can federate at the coalition level. I think you can federate at the federal government level. We federate within the department. The components federate within themselves. So I think that it's a repeatable process. It really is just a matter of setting the rules for how we manage things at the seams. And again, a lot of it has to do with terminology and definitions. Are we speaking the same language, or do we have some way of translating across the boundaries? So semantic web technologies, the use of ontologies is certainly the next level of federation and how it is that we communicate in a way where we don't have to all change our vocabulary, but we have a common understanding of what we're referring to. So, I see Dennis is here. I hope that you found that answer to be
Perfect.
to your liking.
Hi, Brian, how you doing?
Good, how are you, Joe?
You talked about standards in reference to interoperability, and when NIST develops standards, they are required, for example, to refer their standards to international standards organizations, so that we don't have standards developed by individual countries. Now you talk about standards that you develop within your own architecture. What type of standards are you developing that couldn't be better handled at the NIST or at the ISO level?
So anything that goes into an individual architect, the reference architecture where I showed the standards view, those are all standards that come out of the DISR, which include ISO standards, NIST standards. Those are not uniquely developed by the department. In fact, that is the last resort, is to develop a unique standard. So there is an order of precedence for how standards get developed and adopted. The UPDM that I talked about, which is specific to our architecture community, is in fact going into the process of being looked at by ISO. So it's always the intent to carry things to the highest level.
Thank you.
Any more questions? We have a few more minutes.
So we were talking earlier today about shrinking budgets and 25-point IT reform. I was interested that you guys at DoD were also on top of that this topic, and obviously it's playing across all agencies. But I was just curious, one of the topics that came up was just metrics at the mission level versus just responding to sort of your OMB as your customer for the enterprise architect. And I was just wondering if you could comment whether DoD has a point of view on that.
Yeah, at the enterprise level, actually the Deputy Chief Management Officer, who Dennis works for, is probably the person that would best address it, but I'll do what I can. We have a performance management plan for the department that establishes metrics in every functional area. So yes, we are looking at how do we measure things within the department beyond what's asked for by OMB. Data center consolidation metrics are a good thing, but what's it really translating to in terms of operational effectiveness? That's the type of thing we're doing internally. You know, we report what we need to OMB, but at the same time, we're looking at how do we guarantee that those things are improving mission effectiveness. So it's done across the board, and it's under the centralized oversight of the Chief Management Officer.
And just as a follow-up, can you just speak on the shrinking budget element? You know, how are you prioritizing then your investments?
Okay, so I mentioned IT acquisition reform. Key to our IT acquisition reform initiative is the portfolio management. It's already been done within certain areas within the business mission area, and looking at things within portfolios. But that's where really the trade-offs are going to be made on IT investments. But the other element that gets us economies of scale is the delivery of enterprise services. So there's a big effort right now at the federal level to look at shared services, and we've been doing that within DoD now for a number of years. We have a suite of enterprise services that are being deployed, and we're mandating the use of those enterprise services so that we don't get multiple UDDI solutions or identity management solutions. So as those enterprise services are deployed, they are the ones that get used. We stop developing these things over and over.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Barb.
All right, we have another 15-minute break here. Go refill your drinks or